Let's bring up a map of the world as we begin to talk to Carter Holt here, so you can see the locations of both Iraq and Afghanistan as Carter talks about this. What year again are you going into the service?
I went in 2009 and then deployed immediately in 2010 to Iraq.
Okay, and Iraq was the country on the left that you saw on the map, and Afghanistan, the country on the right. And when you went to basic training,
yes,
there's obviously some differences, I'm sure, between the basic training you had and the basic training Tom had, and probably some similarities. But did you have a sense of what it is you wanted to do and what basic training was going to be like, or was it pretty new to you?
it was new to me. When I signed up, I became a combat engineer, and I thought that I was going to be building stuff like bridges, buildings. And when I went through basic training, it turns out I was going to be playing around with explosives. My job was to go out and find and defeat IEDs, which is improvised explosive devices.
As you talk about that, I want to go to a question here from our friends at Arts Academy at Summit about being a combat engineer and what normally would have happened.
What does a combat engineer do?
You ended up working with explosive devices, is that
right?
You said
my job was to clear roads in country and to basically either find contact and to make the roads safer for convoys and the infantry that were behind us.
okay.
So we went where places nobody really wanted to go.
So let's put you in Iraq then. Let's bring up a map. And so when you came into Iraq and we see the capital of Baghdad there, where were you located here?
I was about an hour to an hour and a half north of Baghdad, where that star is, where the river, it's actually the Euphrates River, hooks a left. That's kind of where I was. I was at Joint Base Balad. It was an air base, second largest airstrip the U.S. controlled. And my job was to make sure all the roads were clear so we can get convoys and goods to all the surrounding bases.
And let's give the kids some idea about the equipment that you were using and that kind of thing. We've got an image of what's called a Husky.
Yes.
And we'll bring up the picture of the Husky now, and you can talk to this as you talk about the kind of work you did. It looks like a farm tractor.
It does. It looks like a John Deere tractor, but the teeth up front actually detect IEDs and mines in the ground. And they would send us out first to try to find them in the ground, and if we didn't find them, we'd get blown up in them. And that truck actually saved my life about a month down the road.
We're going to have a chance to talk a little bit more about that and some other examples. I want to go back, though, to Delano's question from Arts Academy at Summit.
What places did you fight in Iraq and Afghanistan?
So we talked a little bit about Iraq and the location you fought there just north of Baghdad. Were you always in the same place?
We covered about 1,000 square kilometers, basically 750 miles worth of road.
And if we look at this map of Iraq that I've brought up on my computer here, then you're going to see a little bit of its topography. You're dealing with a desert environment here, right? Pretty flat all the time?
Just imagine Las Vegas, the desert out west, and that's exactly what we were
Temperatures of?
140 degrees was the hottest I've ever got there, and we felt cold on 80-degree weather. I mean, we're wearing jackets. When
I guess it is all relative, what you get used to.
Exactly.
I'm going to switch and we'll go to a map here of Afghanistan, and you'll see the topography as well. This is the capital. I'm circling it now. The capital.
We were about 55 to 60 miles south of Kabul, the capital there. And we also were, again, at another airstrip, and we controlled roughly the same size of territory. Each trip, our platoon covered around 10,000 kilometers. We cleared 10,000 kilometers while we were there.
And conditions slightly different in Afghanistan, mountainous terrain, and I know it got colder there. You'd have snow there.
We did. We got up to, the year prior to us, they actually got up to 5 feet of snow in my region. But it was extremely mountainous.
Okay, so there you get a little bit of the geography that he's dealing with, the climatic conditions that he's dealing with to do this particular work. And let's talk more about the work that you did then. So we saw the Husky, but you also worked with something called a Buffalo.
Right. After my event, I guess the best way to describe it, they put me in the Buffalo, and it has a huge arm on it that we actually used to dig up IEDs. And it's about a 55 to 60 ton truck that we would drive right up to the site and would actually dig up the IED. And there's a picture of one there. That's about 60, 80 pound IED that we'd actually found on the way back. And they emplaced that in about 2 hours.
Wow. And here we're looking through the Buffalo, like
Yeah,
inside
this is
out.
actually just a picture of their amazing ability to pack things into a truck. And here in the States, you can't exactly do that, but that's actually on the back of the truck is a car that's strapped to all those tires.
My gosh, so that's in Afghanistan.
Yeah, they turn a 2-lane road into a 5-lane highway really quickly. There are no such thing as rules.
I'm going to go, before we begin to talk about a particular incident that happened to you and the nature of that, I want to go to a question from Midview West, Ohio. Go right ahead, Midview West Elementary, about your question about combat.
What kind of combat did you see?
So in terms of the kind of combat that you saw, you actually experienced, you actually experienced dealing with an IED yourself.
Yeah, I was blown up both in Iraq and Afghanistan. Suffered more injuries in Afghanistan than I did in Iraq. And then about 90% of our patrols, we met contact.
And when you say met contact, that means?
We drove into it.
Okay.
I mean, we had a route, and it was just like driving from your home to school. You knew where you ended up, but it's just you had to get there.
And so there might have been sniper fire, there might have been IEDs in the road, there might have been artillery fire, or whatever the case may be?
Anything could happen.
Okay.
And that's what our job was, is to go out and take care of it and beat it head on.
All right, so that because you wanted to clear the ability, that space for other people to, or military weapons to transport through then.
Exactly, because if we didn't do it, then the only way we could supply other bases that if we couldn't reach them was by helicopter, and that made it more dangerous.
And your specific job on that Buffalo was up in the turret, the gunner
I was a gunner, and then
similar to Tom, in a different environment.
Different environment, and mine was actually remote operated, and it was computer control. So basically, I spent 7 months playing a video game. The crosshairs is actually where the barrel of my weapon's pointing, and the weapon that I was on could actually reach out and touch an object up to 2 miles away. And then right next to the words where it says safety is actually a gentleman digging up an IED that we found, and that's about 50 meters away from our truck. 50 meters is roughly 150 feet, plus or minus a few. We deal in meters and kilometers over there, so you get used to speaking that language.
And were there guys who would be marching with you? Like, did you ever get into firefights where you had to do multiple, like have people use their regular weapons? Their rifles?
Absolutely. The safest way to clear route was to have actually people on the ground, dismounted, that would clear alongside our vehicles. Unfortunately, that was the most dangerous part of our job. But if we didn't have them out, then that means they could get closer to us.
Okay.
Our job is to either find it or get hit by it.
Right, and so when you got hit by it, were you also flipped over? I mean, was it that much force?
It sent my truck 30 feet in the air, and I was in a 16-ton truck, and it actually cut my truck in half.
Oh, my.
And I ended up on the side, and I was about good 25, 50 feet away from the blast crater. And the blast crater itself was about 25 feet wide, 20 feet deep, and it took us about 8 hours to fill in.
Because obviously once the blast was there, you had to fill it in because then the guys coming behind you could actually move.
Well, we actually, we reversed and went back because it was getting late, and we'd already been on the road for, at that point, upwards of our second day. And the place we were going was too hot for us, so we actually had to fill in the crater to get the 2 trucks that are on the other side back to our side. That's so we could all head back together.
Okay. And as the soldier in that video talks about receiving his Purple Heart. I assume you got a Purple Heart as well for your injury.
Did.
And were you still in Iraq at that point in time?
No, I was in Afghanistan.
Were you medevac? Oh, you were in Afghanistan at that point.
And they couldn't have medevac me out because of our area was too hot. When they actually put me in the back of a truck to try to, shelter me from what was going on, the truck behind us actually took an RPG and disabled it.
Oh, wow.
Took it out of action. So we actually had to take care of my truck and another truck, and it was just too busy to bring in a medevac type helicopter.
And you mentioned RPG, and that is an acronym that we've heard a lot about.
Yeah, it's
for those who don't know,
rocket propelled grenade that they fire at us, and it's not exactly the most accurate, but when they do hit, it does work.
Right. So your goal obviously was to try to avoid, not just for yourself, but for everybody else, that experience that you had and that experience those soldiers had. You wanted to find the IED before you find anybody else.
Yes.
And we've got some video of a crew doing just that in Afghanistan, and we want everybody to have a chance to see this, and then we'll have Carter explain a little bit more about what it's like to search for IEDs.
In between Camp Tillman and Observation Post 4 is an area known as the Dashta. which straddles the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. It is through here a tank company, 1st of the 503rd Parachute Infantry Regiment, travels by convoy to transport its soldiers between the two bases. However, due to the increased IED threat in the area, the 720th Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team often travels with the convoys. On this particular day, one platoon is going out to relieve another at the OP. On the way there, a suspicious object is spotted in the road, and the convoy comes to a halt. This is where the EOD team jumps into action.
I think I see something. It might be a rock.
From a safe distance, they deploy the Talon robot to examine the object and determine what it is. After a short inspection, they determine it to be a type of anti-tank mine known as the TC-6. The robot and operator have done their job, and now it's time for Sergeant Berkman to go in for a closer look. He puts on the bomb suit, a heavily armored suit made specifically for dealing with explosives.
The bomb suit's designed to protect me against mostly frag, so I don't get cut to pieces quite as bad.
He walks out to the mine cautiously, inspecting the area before finally approaching it. His soldiers watch anxiously on the monitor through the robot's camera. After a few tense minutes, in an attempt to pull the mine free, the decision is made to blow it in place.
Okay, everybody get back, get down.
Sergeant Berkman places a delayed charge on the mine, giving himself and everyone else a chance to move into a safe position before the mine blows. The job is done, the mine is safely destroyed, and no one is hurt. To the EOD soldiers, it's another day at the office. To the rest of us, it's lives saved and another mine safely taken out of action.
So what we see there, they had an explosives team that would come in, and you had the same. You would have been in the Buffalo, the big vehicle we saw at the turret, and you would have potentially already deployed the shovel, for lack of a better thing to call it, to see what the object is.
To dig it out.
To dig it out.
And then either we take care of it up to a certain size.
Okay.
Anything bigger than that, they get to have fun with it.
And what was it, just an arbitrary decision, or was it based on how much damage that IED could potentially do, or?
Well, it's all based off of, you know, what's around us.
Okay.
If we're in a wide open area, then we can safely dispose of it. But if we're in a city, we try to watch out as much as we can for the civilian population. You know, we're there for them. That's the sole reason why we go to war, and it would be the same thing here in the States if it were to happen.
We had an email question come in. Do you have any sense of how many IEDs you exploded?
100 to 120 is our best guess for my platoon. Our company was the most successful route clearance company in Afghanistan. We took care of over 200 plus IEDs.
Same question that some students have for you that they did for Tom. I'll go back to Midview West Elementary for your question about conditions there.
How did you stay in touch with your family while you were away?
So how did you stay in? Were you able to like phone or Skype or whatever?
I was able to Skype occasionally. We did get some internet there towards the end. Called home every 4 or 5 days or so, or when I could. Mm-hmm. It was always interesting for when I did have to call home, because we actually took a lot of incoming.
And by incoming, you mean?
We would get bombed by the enemy, and occasionally I'd have to hang up the phone real quick, go, love you, bye. And I actually did that to my mom, and it really freaked her out. And she actually called my wife, and my wife's like, it's okay, it's happened to me a couple times. And, you know, I called back, you know, let them know I was okay, but
you might not have had a chance to call them back for days or whatever.
Exactly, because, you know, certain instances they would shut off all communication to us because of what was going on around us.
Did you also get the pleasure of eating lamb tongue? What was the food like, that kind of thing for you guys?
Didn't eat lamb tongue, but did try cat and some other foreign meats that we're not used to eating. Mm-hmm. Just because we were trying to be friendly with the Afghanis, and we'd sit down and they'd put out food, and it's very impolite to say no.
Right.
So you got to at least try it. And our kind of rule was you don't ask what it is until you leave. And then
and when it's spiced properly and cooked well, who's to say?
You can hide just about anything.
There you go. Did you have the meals ready to eat, the MREs that you carried with you?
We did. We left those in the trunk, and we definitely ate a bunch of those, especially if we had to go eat with the because you already tell them, hey, I'm full, I'll try it, thank you, and just enjoy the tea, and hopefully you don't get sick.
You'd mentioned about dealing with the people in Afghanistan and just like trying to make them realize that you were there to help them.
Right.
That was actually a big part of your job, was to deal with interpreters as part of your time in Afghanistan, right?
It was. My job was to also, I hired, trained, and used them because our sole job was to make nice, is the simplest way to put it, with the surrounding cities. Because if not, then every time we went through, they would be hostile towards us. And it always wasn't our issue. You know, granted, we might get in a firefight, and unfortunately, something would happen to where it just wouldn't go right. And we'd always bring out extra water, give it to them, food, candy. Kids love candy, just like we all love it, because it's a third world country, and they don't have the luxuries that we have here. And so it was very vital for us to. It was that outreach support that they normally don't get. Very
good. Let's go to another question from Arts Academy at Summit. Emma?
What was the worst thing about being in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Then we'll ask the good thing. We'll get to the good thing in a minute.
Probably the worst thing was not knowing what was going to happen. The constant guessing game. It was basically the world's largest hunt and find, or hide and go seek. You never know what you'd find, in front of you. You always know what you just passed, and you just don't want to look behind you either. You always hope it goes by fast and you get home quick.
Midview West Elementary, let's go to your question.
Did you make any close friendships in the service? Do you stay in contact with your friends from the service?
I did, thank you. A couple of my good friends from my Iraq tour actually stood up in my wedding for me. And I still stay in contact with the guys that I worked with over in Afghanistan, even though I left the service. They will always be with me, and I will always treasure the times that they kept me safe and I kept them safe.